Why do we think black cats are bad luck? Most of us have heard it at some point. A black cat crosses your path, and suddenly someone says, "Uh-oh." Maybe they hesitate, maybe they step back, maybe they laugh it off, but still notice it. What's strange is that many people who don't consider themselves superstitious at all still recognize the moment. So where did that idea come from? Why black cats? And why has this belief stuck around for so long? That's a question you've probably wondered about. Why is that? Long before black cats were ever seen as unlucky, they were actually respected. In ancient Egypt, cats were valued members of the household. They protected stored grain by hunting mice and snakes, and because of that, they helped families survive. Cats were associated with goddess Bastet, who represented protection, fertility, and home life. Harming a cat, any cat, was considered a serious crime. In this world, a black cat wasn't something to fear. It was something to protect. As centuries passed, cats continued to live alongside people, especially in farming communities. They were practical, quiet, independent. And in a time when food supplies could be wiped out by rodents, cats were essential. But as Europe moved into the Middle Ages, something changed. Life became harder, disease spread more easily, and people began looking for reasons and blame when things went wrong. Fear has a way of searching for explanations. When crops failed, when illness spread, when tragedy struck without warning, people wanted answers. And when answers were hard to find, symbols filled the gap. Cats, especially black ones, were active at night. They moved silently. Their eyes reflected light in the dark. To people already anxious and afraid, that mystery felt unsettling. Around the same time, accusations of witchcraft began to spread. Women who lived alone, women who didn't conform, women who owned cats, all began to attract suspicion. Black cats, in particular, became links to the idea of familiars, a supernatural companions believed to help witches. The cat wasn't just an animal anymore, it became a symbol. And once fear attached itself to a symbol, it spreads quickly. The irony is that as cats became feared, many were killed or driven away. This may have had devastating consequences. With fewer cats around, rat population grew, and rats carried fleas that spread the Black Plague. In trying to eliminate what they feared, people may have made things far worse. But fear rarely pauses to check the logic. So how did the idea of bad luck survive after the Middle Ages? Because superstition doesn't disappear, it evolves. Stories get passed down, warnings become habits, habits become reflexes. A black cat crossing your path became a small moment of uncertainty in an unpredictable world. And humans, by nature, are pattern seekers. When something had happened after seeing a black cat, the moment stuck. When nothing happened, it was forgotten. That's how superstitions feed itself. Interestingly, not every culture sees black cats as unlucky. In parts of Scotland and Japan, black cats are considered a sign of good fortune. In some traditions, they represent protection, prosperity, or love. Same animal, completely different meaning, which tells us something important. Superstitions don't come from truth, they come from context. They grow out of fear, uncertainty, and the human need to make sense of the world. Black cats didn't change, people did. Today, many of us know better. We understand science. We question old beliefs, and yet the story lingers. What's interesting is that over time, the superstition didn't disappear. It softened. By the 19th and 20th centuries, the idea of black cats bringing bad luck had started to shift from genuine fear into something more symbolic. It showed up in jokes, cartoons, greeting cards, and Halloween imagery. The danger was no longer real, but the symbol remained. People no longer truly believed a black cat could cause harm, but the idea was still familiar enough to be playful. That shift matters because it shows how superstitions survive by changing tone. When fear fades, superstition doesn't always vanish. It adapts. It becomes tradition, imagery, or humor. And once something reaches that stage, it can last for generations without anyone remembering why it started. What's interesting is how many people say they aren't superstitious at all until a moment like this happens: a ladder overhead, a knock on wood, or black cat crossing the road. Even when we know better, part of us still pauses. Not because we believe the superstition, but because stories have trained us to hesitate. That pause is where superstition lives, not in logic, but in habit. What makes this even more interesting is that the same superstition doesn't exist everywhere. In some cultures, black cats are welcomed, admired, even celebrated. The animal never changed, only the story did. And that tells us something important about superstition itself. Even today, these old beliefs still shape behavior in quiet ways. We might laugh them off, but they influence decisions, reactions, and assumptions more often than we realize. Superstitions don't survive because they're true. They survive because they're memorable. What's interesting about superstitions like this is that they rarely come from advice meant to help us. They come from warnings. Somewhere along the way, someone said, "Be careful," and that warning stuck. Warnings are easier to remember than explanations. They carry emotion. They feel protective, even when the danger is long gone. Over time, the reason behind the warning fades, but the caution remains. A black cat becomes something to avoid, not because of evidence, but because at some point someone decided it was safer to hesitate than to ask why. And once that hesitation becomes a habit, it doesn't need belief to survive. It just needs repetition. A black cat crossing the road still catches our attention, even if we smile and keep walking, because stories are powerful. And once a story gets woven into culture, it can last far longer than the fear that created it. So the next time a black cat crosses your path, maybe pause for a different reason, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. Because sometimes the most interesting part of a superstition isn't whether it's true, it's why we ever believed it in the first place. Why is that? Now you know.